Hey, and welcome to the Drive and Dish podcast. We're here for December the 23rd for our college basketball and NBA picks, a full slate of NBA games. Really exciting. So let's get into it. First, let's break down yesterday's picks. We'll start out with Dynamite David, who had a nice dynamite type of day, 2-0-1. He had a push on the Texas Tech versus Oklahoma -2. He had winners with Kansas -1.5 versus West Virginia, and winner with Georgia -9.5 versus Northeastern. 2-0-1, 12-17-1 on the year for the Dynamite. I went 1-2 overall. I had Charlotte -1 versus George Washington. That game got canceled. I had a winner in Portland +3.5 versus Montana State. Vanderbilt did not cover the 7.5 points versus Davidson, and Purdue did not pose any matchup to Iowa and did not cover the 7 points there. That moves me to 75-59-1 on the year. In the NBA, we went 1-1. The Golden State Warriors did not have enough offense nor enough defense to cover that 7.5 versus Brooklyn. LA Clippers did manage to cover that +3.5 versus the Los Angeles Lakers. So start out the NBA year 1-1 and break even. So what do we got today? Well, let's go over our man Dynamite David's picks. He likes Providence -2.5 versus Butler, Oregon -2.5 versus UCLA, Ohio State -2 versus Rutgers, and Xavier +7.5 versus Creighton. I have a pretty light slate, only 3 games I like today. We're going to start off with George Mason -4.5 versus Townsend. George Mason off to a 3-1 start this year. Not a lot of good wins, a Division II win and 2 low-level Division I team. Their only loss is to Belmont, but we think they're much better than Townsend. Townsend off to an 0-3 start and beat up pretty good in all of their games. So we think definitely George Mason will cover this 4.5-point spread, even if it is on the road. Next, we're going to go to a real barn burner of a matchup. Coppin State +12.5 versus Iona. We still think Iona is getting overplayed a little bit because of Rick Pitino there. So we're going to ride Coppin State, even though they are 1-6 on the year. But one of those wins was a win versus UNC Greensboro, the 113th ranked team, according to Kim Palm. So they show they can play at least a little bit here. So 12.5 points versus Iona. We think this will be a much, much closer game than that. So take Coppin State +12.5. And last, we're going with Depaul, who has not played yet this year, but we think they're much better than Western Illinois. We look for Depaul to blow this out, even though it is a very large spread. Not very big on taking these large spreads, but we think this will easily be a 20-point plus win for Depaul. So the -17, pretty good value here. Western Illinois, really one of the worst teams in Division I. Their 2 wins are UT Martin, who is worse than they are in Division I, and their other is a D2 win. So we don't think the Depaul will be able to have much problem blowing out Western Illinois here. So those are my college games for the day. Pretty light slate for me, but we think those will be winners. Let's move on to the NBA, where I have a handful of picks today. Full slate of NBA games. First real tip-off day after yesterday's 2-game slate. We're going to ride the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Boston Celtics, -4.5. We think Milwaukee, as always, will play a really, really nice regular season. So we think they'll beat up on the Boston Celtics and cover that 4.5. Next up, we have the Washington Wizards +7.5 versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Think that'll be a really good game. I really like this Washington team. I think they'll be a little undervalued early in the season, so jump on them when you can. This should be a really good, entertaining game, and I think the Wizards will be able to cover that 7.5. Next up, we have the Chicago Bulls +2.5 versus the Atlanta Hawks. We think the Bulls are a much better team than the Hawks. The Hawks made all the flashy moves, but I think the Bulls have the talent here to match up with the Atlanta Hawks and actually outright win this game. Really like this game. Really like the Chicago Bulls here. Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons. Plus the 5.5 versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. As long as Blake Griffin's healthy, I think this Pistons team, I don't know if will be a great team, but I think they will be able to hang around, especially bottom feeders like the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't think there's too much of a talent disparity between Timberwolves and Pistons as long as Blake Griffin's healthy. So I look for this pretty decent value here in the line for the Detroit Pistons plus the 5.5. And lastly, we have the Dallas Mavericks plus 1.5 versus the Phoenix Suns. Should be a really, really entertaining game. Looking forward to watching this, but we think Phoenix is overvalued, and we think Dallas is definitely the team to play. That's our show for today. Be sure to follow our other Drive and Dish podcast that will come on later today. It will be daily fantasy matchup plays for the NBA. Be sure to find all our podcasts on greenlightnetwork.org. We have a football time podcast that just dropped with Achilles Reign, a recap of all the NFL games last week. Me and Dynamite David broke down all the bowls and made picks for all the bowl games. We'll see how many of those get played. That's our show, and we're out.